Hey everyone, and welcome back to Western Flavors. Before we begin our new episode, let's recap the beautiful and heartbreaking events from our last story. We saw a desperate Ty and Caleb race on horseback towards Heartland to warn the family about Nathan's sinister plan. At the same time, a completely unaware Amy was swept up in a perfect romantic evening, which ended with Nathan's beautiful proposal under the stars. The story left us on a devastating cliffhanger as Amy, her heart full of hope for a new future, tearfully whispered yes, sealing her fate just as the men who were trying to save her were on the brink of arriving. If you missed that incredible, suspenseful story, the full playlist is linked for you in the description below. If you're enjoying this new season, please take a second to hit that like button and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a chapter. Now today, the two worlds collide in the most brutal way possible as Nathan's secret war for Heartland finally comes out of the shadows. The town of Hudson was asleep. The quiet, familiar main street was bathed in the soft, lonely glow of the streetlights, a peaceful, picture-perfect image of small-town life. But on the dark, unlit road at the edge of town, a desperate, frantic race was coming to an end. Two horses, their coats slick with sweat, their sides heaving with exhaustion, were finally slowing to a halt. On their backs, two men, equally exhausted, slid from their saddles, their boots hitting the gravel with the heavy finality of men who had reached the end of their rope. Ty and Caleb stood in the deep shadows of an old, closed-down feed shop, the horses' ragged breathing loud in the quiet night. They had made it. After a grueling, non-stop and high-stakes ride, they were finally here. But the sight of the quiet, sleeping town did not bring them relief. It only sharpened the jagged edges of their anxiety.
Okay, we're here. Now what? We can't just go storming up to the front door, not like this.
He gestured to their appearance. They were a mess. Their clothes were muddy and torn from the crash and their subsequent journey, and their faces were etched with a deep, primal weariness.
I know. We need to get to Jack, and only Jack. He's the only one who will believe us. The only one who can handle this without it all exploding.
He looked towards the distant, familiar lights of the Heartland Ranch, a warm, golden glow on a far-off hill. His heart ached with a profound, desperate longing. He was so close, and yet he had never felt further away.
We'll wait until first light. We'll find a way to get a message to him, to get him to meet us somewhere, alone.
And Amy? What about Amy? She's wearing that monster's ring right now, Ty. We have to tell her.
Not yet.
Ty's voice was a low, pained growl.
I can't. Not until I have proof. Not until I have a real plan. To tell her now. It would just be a crazy story from a dead man. She wouldn't believe me, and he would be right there, whispering in her ear, telling her I'm insane, that I'm dangerous. He'd use her love for me to turn her against me. I won't let him do that.
The cold, hard, and terrifying logic of his words settled between them. They were in an impossible position. They had the truth, a truth that could save the family they loved. But the truth was so unbelievable, so monstrous, that it was a weapon that could just as easily destroy them all. They were so consumed by their own desperate, whispered strategy session that neither of them noticed the dark, unmarked van that had been parked in the deep shadows at the far end of the street. Neither of them saw the figures inside, watching them, their faces grim and professional, and neither of them noticed when the van's engine, a low, almost silent hum, purred to life. They had been found. Nathan's secret manhunt, the one that had been a quiet, digital search, had been escalated the moment Ty had been spotted at the library. His investigators, ruthless and efficient professionals, had been tracking them ever since they had left Scott Cardinal's ranch. They had just been waiting for the perfect, quiet, and isolated moment to strike. And this was it. The van pulled away from the curb, its headlights off, a silent, black predator gliding through the darkness. It turned the corner and came up the street behind them. Ty and Caleb were still deep in their conversation, their backs to the road. They didn't hear a thing until it was too late. The van screeched to a halt beside them, the side door sliding open with a violent metallic bang. Before they could even fully register what was happening, three large dark figures exploded out of the vehicle. They were not cowboys, they were not ranchers. They were professionals, dressed in black, their movements swift, silent, and brutal. Ty's instincts, honed by a lifetime of survival, kicked in a split second before they were on him. He shoved Caleb a desperate, wordless warning.
Go run!
But there was nowhere to run. One of the men, a mountain of a man with a cold, dead look in his eyes, grabbed Caleb, lifting him off his feet with an almost inhuman strength. Caleb, a seasoned brawler, fought back, his fists flying, but it was like punching a brick wall. Two other men were on Tai. He fought with a wild, desperate, and feral intensity, a cornered animal fighting for its life. He landed a solid, bone-jarring punch to one man's jaw, sending him stumbling back. But the other one was on him, his arm wrapping around Tai's neck in a chokehold, cutting off his air. Tai's vision began to swim, black spots dancing in front of his eyes. The fight was over in less than a minute. It was a swift, professional, and brutally efficient takedown. They were overpowered, subdued, their hands bound behind their backs with thick plastic zip ties that cut into their wrists. They were unceremoniously thrown into the back of the van, a dark, windowless, and metal-floored cage. The last thing Tai saw before the heavy door slammed shut was the quiet, peaceful, and completely oblivious main street of his own hometown. The doors closed, plunging them into a profound, suffocating, and absolute darkness. The van's engine roared to life, and with a squeal of tires, it sped away into the night, leaving the two abandoned horses to stare, confused and riderless, into the darkness. The desperate, hopeful race to save Heartland was over. They had lost. And now, the nightmare was just beginning. While Tai and Caleb were being violently abducted from the quiet, sleeping streets of Hudson, a very different and much more beautiful drama was reaching its romantic climax. High above the town, in the cool, clear air of the Alberta foothills, Amy Fleming was standing on a secluded lookout point, bathed in the soft, silvery light of a million stars, her heart so full of a new, brilliant, and unexpected joy that she felt like she might float away. The man in front of her, the man who had been her kind, steady, and patient friend for 4 long years, was on one knee holding a small velvet box that contained a beautiful, glittering promise of a new future. Nathan's proposal had been perfect. His words had been a beautiful, heartfelt testament to his love for her, his respect for her past, and his hope for their shared future. And she, in a moment of pure, unadulterated, and cathartic release, had said yes. The kiss they had shared, after he had slid the stunning, perfect ring onto her finger, had been a seal on that promise. It was a kiss of profound, deep, and passionate commitment, a kiss that had closed a long, painful chapter of her life, and had, she believed, opened a new and wonderfully hopeful one. She was no longer just a grieving widow, a single mother. She was a fiancée, a woman with a future. The drive back to Heartland was a quiet, intimate, and dreamlike journey. Amy sat in the passenger seat of Nathan's truck, the beautiful, heavy ring, a foreign, glittering presence on her finger. She couldn't stop looking at it. It was a tangible, physical symbol of the choice she had just made, a choice to finally, truly, and completely move on. She looked over at the man beside her, at his handsome, happy face, and she felt a profound sense of peace. This was right. This was her new life.
You're quiet. Having second thoughts already.
His tone was a gentle, loving tease, but she could hear the small, hopeful question that lay just beneath it.
No, not at all,
She said, her voice a soft, certain murmur. She reached across the console and placed her hand on his, her new ring glinting in the dim green glow of the dashboard lights.
I'm just happy. It's been a long time since I felt this kind of happy.
His own hand turned to grip hers, his thumb gently stroking her knuckles.
Me too. You've made me a very, very happy man, Amy Fleming.
It was in this perfect, quiet, and intimate moment that his phone buzzed, a harsh, unwelcome intrusion from the outside world. He glanced down at the screen, and Amy saw his easy, romantic smile instantly vanish, replaced by a sharp, focused, and all-business intensity. He pulled the truck over to the side of the road, the sudden jarring halt a strange, discordant note in their otherwise perfect evening.
Sorry, I have to take this. It's important.
He answered the call, his voice no longer the warm, loving tone of a fiancé, but the cold, commanding voice of the man from the Calgary boardroom.
Yeah, what is it?
He listened for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the dark, empty road ahead, his face a mask of unreadable concentration. Amy sat in the passenger seat, a small, uncomfortable flicker of unease beginning to intrude on her happy bubble. This was a side of him she rarely saw, the side that was a powerful and slightly intimidating businessman. A slow, cold, and deeply satisfied smile began to spread across his face. It was not the warm, loving smile he gave to her. It was a different smile entirely. It was the smile of a predator who has just had its prey walk directly into its trap.
Good. That's excellent news. Where are they now?
He listened again, a small, almost imperceptible nod.
No, don't bring them to me yet. Take them to the secondary location. The old warehouse. Keep them there. Quietly. I'll deal with them in the morning. Just make sure they are secure, and make sure no one saw you.
He ended the call and tossed the phone onto the center console, the dark, intense energy of the conversation still clinging to him. He was a different man than the one who had proposed to her just a half an hour ago. Amy looked at him, her own face a mask of confused, slightly apprehensive curiosity.
Is everything okay? What was that about?
He turned to her, and the cold, hard businessman was gone, replaced once again by the warm, loving, and completely charming fiancé. He smiled, and the smile was so perfect, so reassuring, that she instantly dismissed the strange, cold feeling she had just had.
It's all okay.
He said, his voice a smooth, calming purr. He reached out and gently tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear.
Nathan, just a little bit of business, a problem I've been trying to solve for a long time, but we got it. It's all under control now.
He leaned in and gave her a soft, lingering kiss, a kiss that was a perfect, beautiful lie, and Amy, so full of her own new, brilliant, and beautiful hope, believed him. She believed him completely. She had no idea that the business problem he had just solved was the father of her child, the man whose ghost she had finally, she believed, laid to rest. She had no idea that the man whose ring she was now wearing, the man she had just promised her future to, was at that very moment holding her past captive in a dark, cold, and secret prison. The back of the van was a black metallic tomb, a jolting claustrophobic cage that smelled of old oil and cold, damp steel. Ty and Caleb were thrown against the hard corrugated floor as the vehicle tore through the night, its movements sharp and violent, a physical manifestation of the brutal efficiency of their captors. They were prisoners, their hands bound so tightly behind their backs that their fingers had gone numb, their world reduced to a profound, disorienting darkness. For a long time, the only sounds were the roar of the engine, the squeal of the tires, and their own ragged, painful breathing. Ty's mind was a maelstrom of white-hot, impotent rage. He had been so close. He had made it back. He had been on the very precipice of warning his family, of saving them. And now he was back in a cage, a helpless, captive animal, while the wolf was on his way to the henhouse, a diamond ring in his pocket, and a beautiful, innocent lie on his lips. Caleb, beside him, was a mixture of stunned disbelief and a slow, simmering fury. The entire insane reality of the last few days, Ty's impossible return, the unbelievable story of Nathan's conspiracy, had just been brutally, violently, and undeniably confirmed. He was no longer just a listener in this story. He was a participant, a prisoner. The van finally screeched to a halt after what felt like an eternity. The back doors were thrown open, and the sudden harsh glare of a single bare floodlight made them both flinch. They were in a vast, empty space, a derelict, abandoned warehouse on the industrial outskirts of Hudson. It was a place of crumbling brick, of shattered windows, of a profound and forgotten decay. It was the perfect place to make two men disappear. They were hauled out of the van with a rough, impersonal efficiency and dragged into the building. Their destination was a small, pre-existing office that had been converted into a makeshift cell. The window had been boarded up, and a heavy, solid steel door with a new industrial-grade lock had been installed. They were shoved inside, their bodies stumbling onto the cold, dusty concrete floor. The door slammed shut with a deafening final clang, the sound of the heavy lock sliding into place a definitive metallic punctuation mark on the end of their freedom. They were left in a state of near-total darkness, the only light a thin, pale sliver from under the door. For a long moment, they just lay there, the shock, the adrenaline, and the sheer, brutal reality of their situation washing over them. Caleb was the first to speak, his voice a low, angry growl in the darkness. "Caleb, who the hell are these guys? Are they gonna kill us?"
I don't think so.
Ty's voice was surprisingly calm, the initial hot rage having cooled into a cold, analytical focus.
If they were going to kill us, they would have done it on the side of the road. No witnesses. No. This is different. This is about control. He doesn't want us dead. He wants us contained. He wants us gone.
The full, horrifying weight of Nathan's plan, of his sheer ruthless arrogance, was beginning to settle in. He wasn't just trying to steal a ranch. He was trying to steal a life, an entire reality, and to lock the real one away in a dark, forgotten room.
So what do? We just sit here and wait for him to marry Amy and bulldoze Heartland?
No, we wait for an opportunity. And when it comes, we take it.
The quiet, unwavering certainty in his voice was a small, steady flame in the overwhelming darkness, but Caleb, a man of action, A man who could not, would not, just sit and wait, had already made his own move.
I think I might have already made one.
He said, a small, triumphant, and slightly pained grunt in his voice.
What are you talking about?
Caleb, when they ambushed us, when that big bastard was grabbing me, I had my phone in my hand. It was quick, and it was clumsy, but I think I got it off.
Got what off? A call?
A text. To Ashley. Just 3 letters. SOS. And I turned my GPS on. If she got it, if she understands, she'll know where I am. Or at least where I was.
A small, fragile, and brilliant flicker of hope was ignited in the cold, dark cell. It wasn't a plan. It wasn't a guarantee. But it was something. It was a single, desperate message in a bottle, thrown out into the vast, dark ocean of the night. It was a chance. And now, as Ty had said, it was a waiting game. A quiet, tense, and desperate waiting game, played out in the darkness of a secret, makeshift prison, a game where the stakes were not just their own lives, but the very soul of the family they had both sworn to protect. The hours in the dark, cold, and silent cell crawled by with an agonizing slowness. Ty and Caleb were left alone with their thoughts, a single thin sliver of moonlight from under the door, the only proof that the world outside still existed. They talked in low, hushed tones, a desperate, whispered strategy session in the darkness. They checked the walls, the door, searching for any weakness, any possibility of escape. But the makeshift cell was a fortress. The door was solid steel, the lock was new, and the boarded-up window was protected by old, rusted iron bars. They were prisoners. Their only hope was the small, fragile, and completely uncertain possibility that Caleb's desperate 3-letter text message had made it to Ashley. It was in the deep, dark hours of the early morning, when their own hope had begun to dwindle to a tiny, flickering ember, that they finally heard it. The sound of a vehicle approaching, its engine a low, powerful rumble that was a stark intrusion into the quiet of the night. The sound of a car door slamming, and then footsteps, the confident, unhurried footsteps of a man who owned the world. A key scraped in the heavy industrial lock. The bolt slid back with a loud metallic clang, and the steel door swung open. A figure stood silhouetted in the harsh, sudden glare of a powerful flashlight. He stepped into the cell, and the man who had been the smiling, charming, and beloved friend of the Heartland family was gone, replaced by a cold, triumphant, and utterly ruthless villain, Nathan Price. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, the flashlight beam moving slowly, deliberately, from Caleb's angry, defiant face to Ty's. His own face was a mask of cool, calm, and deeply unsettling satisfaction. He was a predator, admiring his catch.
So, you're back.
He said, his voice a low, almost casual murmur directed at Ty. It was not a question. It was a statement of profound and deeply inconvenient fact. Ty, who had been a coiled spring of a cold, hard rage, finally completely and utterly erupted. He launched himself at the bars of their makeshift cell, his hands gripping the cold, hard steel, his own voice a raw, powerful, and guttural roar of pure, unrestrained fury.
I'm going to kill you, Price. You hear me? When I get out of here, I am going to kill you.
Nathan didn't even flinch. He just watched Ty's violent, emotional outburst with a look of cool, clinical detachment. The same look Ty now remembered from the White Room in Ontario. He was a scientist, observing a predictable, emotional reaction from a lab rat. Caleb, his own mind still reeling from the unbelievable, monstrous truth of the situation, was the one who asked the question that was at the heart of it all.
Why? Nathan, for God's sake, why? We trusted you. We thought you were our friend. Amy, she loves you. How could you do this to her? To him?
Nathan finally, slowly, turned his cold, reptilian gaze to Caleb, and he smiled. It was a smile that was completely devoid of warmth, a simple, chilling expression of pure, triumphant arrogance.
You really don't get it, do you, Odell? You think this was about love? About friendship? You are so much more naive than I gave you credit for.
He began to pace the small space in front of the cell, a professor delivering a lecture to a captive audience.
This has never been about Amy. She is a means to an end, a beautiful, charming, and regrettably necessary part of a much larger and much more important business transaction.
He told them everything. He told them about the oil and gas corporation, about the vast, untapped natural gas reservoir that lay like a sleeping dragon beneath the sacred, protected soil of Heartland. He told them about his family's long, bitter history with the Bartletts, about a legacy he felt had been stolen, and he told them about his own brilliant 4-year-long plan to reclaim it.
Your friend here,
he said, gesturing to Ty with a dismissive wave of his hand.
he was a problem, a complication. His ridiculous bleeding heart campaigns to raise awareness for the welfare of wild animals were causing all sorts of headaches for some of my... Kapalb, you're a horse smuggler? Among other things. And more importantly, as long as he was here, as long as he was the man of the house, I could never get close enough to Amy, to the one person who would one day hold the keys to the kingdom. So he had to be removed. It was a simple, logical, and necessary business decision.
Ty, his own rage now a cold, hard, and murderous knot in his gut, was silent, just listening, absorbing the full monstrous scope of the man's evil.
And I have to say, it was a work of art. A tragic, unfortunate, and completely untraceable death, a grieving, vulnerable widow, and me, the kind, supportive friend, there to pick up the pieces. It was perfect, and it would have stayed perfect if he hadn't been so inconveniently and so inexplicably resurrected.
He stopped his pacing and looked at them, a look of genuine, almost academic curiosity on his face.
I am actually curious, Ty. How did you get your memory back? The doctors assured me that the process was irreversible. You were a blank slate, a ghost. And now, you're here. It's a fascinating and deeply frustrating medical anomaly.
His cold, clinical detachment, his complete and utter lack of a conscience, was the most terrifying thing of all. He was not a man driven by a passionate, misguided love. He was a monster, a sociopath, a man for whom human lives were just pieces on a chessboard, and he had been moving those pieces for 4 long years, in a game that they had never even known they were playing. Nathan finished his monstrous, self-congratulatory monologue, a look of genuine, almost academic, curiosity on his face. He was not a man confessing to a crime. He was a scientist, explaining the elegant, logical precision of his own brilliant, sociopathic experiment. He looked at the 2 men in the cell, at the shattered, horrified disbelief on Caleb's face, and the cold, murderous, and utterly silent rage on Ty's, and he seemed pleased. He had not just imprisoned them physically, he had completely and utterly destroyed their perception of the world. He gave a small, satisfied sigh as if he had just finished a particularly good meal.
Well, I'm glad we had this chat. It's good to finally clear the air.
He turned, his movements casual, as if he were leaving a business lunch.
Don't worry, you'll be well taken care of here. My people will bring you food and water. It's a comfortable enough space, and it's a long way from anywhere. No one will ever find you. You'll have a lot of time to think, to reflect, and eventually, you'll forget all over again.
The casual, almost friendly cruelty of his final words was the most terrifying thing of all. He was not just going to imprison them, he was going to erase them all over again. He was going to finish the job he had started 4 years ago. He walked out of the cell, the beam of his flashlight preceding him. He didn't look back. He was completely and utterly confident that he had won. He had neutralized the threat. His secret was safe. His future with Amy, and with the billions of dollars that lay sleeping under her family's land, was secure. The heavy steel door slammed shut, the sound a deafening final boom that echoed in the vast, empty warehouse. The lock scraped, the heavy bolt sliding into place, a final metallic punctuation mark on the end of their freedom. They were plunged back into a profound and absolute darkness. Caleb, who had been a statue of stunned, horrified silence throughout Nathan's entire monstrous confession, finally, completely, and utterly broke. A gut-wrenching, animalistic sound of pure, helpless rage erupted from his chest. He threw himself at the bars of the makeshift cell, his hands gripping the cold, hard steel, his body shaking with a violent, impotent fury.
That son of a gun, that lying, evil twat. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to tear him apart with my bare hands.
His voice was a raw, guttural roar of a good man who had just been forced to look into the face of pure, unadulterated evil. But Ty, in a strange and complete role reversal, was a picture of absolute terrifying calm. He stood in the center of the dark cell, his breathing even, his posture relaxed. The hot, explosive rage he had felt just a few minutes ago was gone, burned away, leaving in its place something much colder, much harder, and infinitely more dangerous. It was a diamond-hard and completely unshakable resolve. He had been a victim for 4 long years. He had been a pawn in another man's game. He had been a ghost, a drifter, a confused and broken man. But not anymore. In this dark, cold, and seemingly hopeless cell, he had finally truly found himself again. He was not just a husband, not just a father. He was a survivor. He was a fighter. and he had just been given the one thing he had been searching for all along, a reason, a clear, righteous, and all-consuming cause. He walked over to the cell door and placed a hand on his friend's shaking shoulder.
Easy, Caleb. Easy. Yelling isn't going to get us out of here.
His voice was a low, quiet, and incredibly steady murmur in the darkness. Caleb turned, his own face a mask of confused, heartbroken despair.
What are we going to do, man? It's over. He's won. He's got Amy. He's got the ranch. And he's got us. It's over.
Ty looked at his best friend, at the raw, unfiltered hopelessness in his eyes, and then he looked past him, into the darkness, in the direction of the man who thought he had buried him for good. And for the first time in a very, very long time, Ty Borden smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was a cold, dangerous, and deeply confident smile. It was the smile of a man who had been pushed to the very edge of his own existence and had not just survived, but had come back stronger. It was the smile of a man who had absolutely nothing left to lose, and therefore was the most dangerous man in the world. The episode ends on a tight, defiant close-up of his face, his eyes, even in the near-total darkness, seeming to burn with a new, cold, and righteous fire. His final words are not a shout. They are a quiet, powerful, and unbreakable promise, a declaration of war, spoken to Nathan's retreating back.
We won't let you win, Nathan.